way of dealing with making the common resources available to everyone and the responsibilities that are taken on by individuals who benefit from this, this property. And we were introduced to a very interesting term, So-You, which means the community of common responsibility, and I hope this term will be developed further as a concept. Now, in accordance with the request of the Secretariat of the World Water Forum, a request which came only a little over a week ago, we undertook before the session to develop a series of recommendations that drew in part upon the experiences of the third and fourth water forums, and which also reflected our understanding of where the papers were going to go. And I believe, could we have the PowerPoint of this? We have it loaded on the computer. Is there somebody who's in charge of the computer?
Bilgisayarda PowerPoint'i göstermeye yardımcı olabilir misiniz? Hazırlamışlar.
It says 653. No, that's not it. There's another one. It's on the left side. That's a different one. That's the wrong one. You can keep this for the next speaker, I think. Over on the left. There it is. Yeah. Thank you. Now, thank you. As you can see, we have 2 pages of recommendations, and we felt a little bit awkward about the process of having to produce these recommendations actually before the session took place. And there was not much time to discuss these recommendations in the session itself. And so I think this is an indication where, in fact, our recommendations were in conflict with the process that we were asked to undergo. And so I would recommend that in the future, if there are to be policy recommendations coming from the different panel sessions, that there should be a greater degree of earlier organization, circulation of proposals, and I would really recommend consultation between all of the panelists on the basis of circulation of complete papers rather than short abstracts. Because otherwise, we simply end up, as we did yesterday, we functioned as an executive committee which presented a series of recommendations and asked for comments for 5 or 10 minutes. And that's not the kind of process that results in very strong recommendations. Nevertheless, I think that those of us who had a chance to work on this, we feel that these are interesting recommendations. It's a long list, and that's inevitable if you have a kind of committee working together. But I think this reflects a number of the emphases in the panel. So as you can see, I won't read these out, but these are stressing human rights, not only the concept, but the implementation of what is already there. The simultaneous recognition of biodiversity, of local ecologies, and the diversity of human cultures. And let's see if I can get this to, right. As you can see, if you glance at these last 5 recommendations, this is about the process of consultation and consent of local communities. We have a large and imaginative proposal for a global water center, which hopefully could be a real open access example of how different local water cultures could interact with each other in a South-South kind of negotiation, as well as with the global organizations. Recognizing indigenous peoples and established religious traditions as sources of reflection on the use of water, and the whole notion of joint planning, building in diversity start. Once again, I would recommend that the World Water Forum itself embody these processes of open access and early consultation. Those are our recommendations, and thank you very much.
Evet, biz de teşekkür ediyoruz. Üçüncü panelle ilgili değerlendirme ve geliştirdikleri öneriler için. Şimdi 4. bölüm, bugün sabah oturumunda izlediğimiz bölüm, geleneksel kültürel miras ve bilgi sistemleri geçmiş ve günümüz medeniyetlerinin oluşmasında önemli rol oynamıştır. Her zaman böyle olmuştur. Geçmiş kuşakların oluşturduğu kültürel mirasın yansıması olan bu bilgi sistemleri günümüzdeki sürdürülebilir kaynak yönetimi modellerinin de oluşmasına ışık tutmuştur. Bu bağlamda bunların daha ayrıntılı ve her yönüyle ele alınabileceği oldukça geniş katılımlı bir oturumumuz vardı. Oldukça geniş katılımlıydı ve burada da gene o paneli değerlendirmek üzere 2 konuşmacımız var. Onlara ben sırasıyla söz vermek istiyorum. Bu panelin başlığı geleneksel su yönetimi ve küresel çevre değişimi, gelecek için yollar planlamaktı. Bu bağlamda önce hanginiz konuşmak istersiniz?
Ben konuşayım isterseniz.
Peki. Sayın İlter Turan'a önce söz veriyorum. Peki, buyurun.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, traditional water management and global environmental change, charting sustainable paths for the future. This was the title of our panel this morning. At the conclusion of the panel, one of the participants from the audience expressed a concern that during the wrap-up session, much of the lively discussion and the valuable information contained in the presentations might evaporate because it is too brief an undertaking to wrap things up in the end. Someone must have overheard this, for they took measures to ensure that we will do a better job. So I have a godsend here called Tom Goldtooth, who is really going to summarize what went on in this session. Let me just make some brief observations. Let me begin by pointing out that we did have an extremely interesting geographical coverage in terms of the members of the panel, starting from Kenya, extending to Cook Islands, Canada, Guatemala, and when you look at these societies, maybe they had one thing in common. Since we're interested in identifying traditional water management as a resource for us to guide us in our future actions as regards the utilization of water, we must operate in environments where tradition is preserved and there is a value attached to either preserving or reconstituting tradition. And therefore, the conversations were generally directed around, or took place around the concept of indigenous peoples and their ways of doing things. And it was generally agreed that everyone has started their presentations with approximately the same sentence: water is life. Water, in fact, it was said, was a gift, and it was a spirit. What we find in this morning's presentation is a rather holistic conceptualization of water, not just as a commodity. In fact, the notion that water should be taken out and abstracted from everything else and treated as a commodity did not find favor in our discussions. Water was a part of the value system, part of the belief system, part of the environmental system, and part of the productive system. And it was agreed that it must be preserved and it must be restored. And in order to achieve that, traditional knowledge is very important, and we should not lose it, and wherever it may have disappeared, we should make an attempt to refine it, to reconstitute it, and apply it in our everyday utilization of water.